Today is first 2 weeks of 2014. We're going to start and do a speedy assembly of the chassis, rolling chassis. We're just about there. The only thing we're not going to install today is going to be the actual airbags, only because of the shelf life of them, and it's gonna we'll put those in towards the very end. But we'll make positioning pucks to hold it in place while we get a roller of this motor going back together, of this chassis going back together. Everything has been sandblasted, powder coated to the appropriate finish in sheen, which is basically the original Cadillac black. All the bushings, ball joints, bearings, anything that could be rebuilt, same was rebuilt with replacement components, and all the original components that the car came with are on the car, or will be on the car. Everything was in very good shape. We had one change, and that was the air suspension system on these things was amazing when they worked. But Cadillac pretty much knew that when they don't work, then they would put in coil springs, and somebody in many years gone by had just replaced the air springs with the coil springs. So we were actually able to source another Cadillac and pull all the original components off so that we could go back to the original air spring suspension, which is what we have here. All of the steering box, everything is numbers match. It's rebuilt same, and those were performed in-house. All the measurements and tolerances were taken, and anything that was out of variation was basically brought back into spec. All the hardware has been was indexed, bag tagged, sandblasted, and is the one that actually came off of the car. So we know everything's going to fit and everything's nice and tidy. So what we're going to do is we'll start front passenger corner. And you can see we went through it. And very honestly, rebuilding and going through everything was here. It was in such good core shape. And you can see we put like a couple of items had to be like the outer, we have the outer tie rod-ins too. They're right there. They just came in. A couple of items are replaced, but for the most part, everything was blown apart. And the original parts are just such high quality that it's a hard justification. Plus this center tube, just the bare tube, $500 to replace. Just the bare tube. And it didn't have a ding or a dent, and it was in great shape. So that was a pretty easy decision for us. No, I think everything on it, there was no damage. This chassis is in amazingly good condition. That's the, I guess you say the frontside transmission crossmember. Not really the, yeah, I guess frontside transmission crossmember, and then there's a smaller one that goes right behind it. And those are essentially frame gussets. So they stiffen the frame or the chassis in that area, but they were also used to locate and secure mount the transmission. And then the front motor mounts would be in front right here. You kind of tell, pretty much haven't used any tools, and pretty much by hand, and everything's nice and clean. So everything with a little adjust and massage, if it all fits right in, that's always a really good sign that everything is square, appropriate, does what it's supposed to do. And yeah, there's probably about every section of the vehicle or the chassis, being A-arms, steering, the core brake components, the rear axle, some of the airbag stuff, you know, every one of those took anywhere from 1 to 3 days per section to kind of prep, like one day of man hours. So if one guy's working on it, there's probably about a week would be a guess of, you know, yeah. So when you see, you know, on TV and they build a car in 35 minutes with, you know, a 1 hour show with commercials, yeah, that just doesn't happen. This is basically the upper bucket, which was the equivalent of the front one. This is for the rear. So we don't want to, and the rubber, basically the rubber bladder curls into here, locks in, and the air chamber is on the back side. The air lets in here. This is all sealed. So it's literally, and you can see this had a little bit of damage, and the important part was it's smooth on the inside. So it basically was heat pounded, and then the idea is that rubber bag is a sleeve inside. The air chamber would be above it. So as it inflates through here, air goes up behind the bladder. The weight of the vehicle actually keeps it from leaking, and as it comes down, it basically, the bladder comes down like this, the rubber bag, which inflates the vehicle because it's essentially pushing the chassis up against the lower suspension, which is on the ground. So one of the problems that Cadillac had that a lot of people didn't know and they had to learn was they've got a flat tire and the ignition was on, or the door was open, or you took it to a mechanic that wasn't familiar and they put it up on the rack, the air suspension would kick in and it would blow out the bags and basically render it useless. I guess back maybe when the car was 3 to 5 years old, probably getting a replacement bag was just no big deal. But nowadays, that's an extremely expensive, hard to get, big deal. But you want to leave the inside smooth, and what we'll basically do is spray it and lubricate it so the rubber doesn't chafe or grab on anything. It'll give it the guide. And we didn't want to paint it or coat it on the inside for fear that it would rub over time, and then you would actually get basically chipped off paint. And anything we can do to keep that environment sterile and clean is the most important thing, including the air induction that comes in from the compressor. It's filtered, and you always want to make sure that oil and moisture and, you know, everything stays out of it, which they knew back in 1959. I mean, it's like spraying paint. You want a contaminant, moisture-free environment. That's what will keep these bags in the system running for a very long time. And this is the first time anything has been actually fitted on the car. So we hadn't fit anything till right now. So physically put on, like this there's no dry run on this. This is the first time these components have actually been secured in any manner. We laid them out, we measured, we chased all the holes. We basically prepped everything for the first test fit, and this becomes the first test fit. Everything that is stable and secure will get torqued down. Anything that has a hint of adjustment needed, then we'll adjust it. But other than that rear joint and a couple of lock washers that I'm noticing that we want to put on, other than that, everything's going together very nicely.